Mame fa na say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there o say dem yopo.
A fine gentleman. Now, Tsatsu Tsikata history no and the your young people in Ghana, they hear, oh, Chachu, Kufo Jeli Tsatsu Tsikata, MP before Jeli Tsatsu Tsikata, oh yeah, ding. Now, a DN is see ya Tsatsu Tsikata echo jail. Now, Tsatsu Tsikata, Odimse Obeko jail. Now, Tsatsu Tsikata, as someone in court, Naya Kenri. Tsatsu Tsikata, was he going to court to go listen to Sesibia, Debia Ato Forson also echo court nana? These are things we are supposed to remind ourselves. Since Ekufuado and sorry Kufo ejeli Tsatsu Tsikata na ende 16 years Kufo years ade no me catch them ya papa Kufo 50 oba power no kuta two agendas. The first one was to make sure say JJ Rawlings with Jelly Rawlings anyeye. The second agenda was to make sure say NDC phobia ompe omasem he jails them. That is why in the first place Obaye he came to set up what we call a commission, reconciliation. We and also or fast track court. Two things. Agenda nina was to put people in jail. People who were innocent about issues. Kufo had an agenda. Not MPP for agenda. Into Obaye and also a fast track court. Fast. And you better now 24 hours near jailing Kufo. It was targeted at some individuals. NLT be a friend of the reconciliation commission. And also na a set it trap said the bay and could be because JJ Rawlings actually two boni to nanko for JJ Rawlings and to if you say for good and also ANC. But he was able to get away with this one, which is Tsatsu Tsikata you know, or try or manipulative system as the president or behind the scenes and already or manipulative system no ma system no finding a way to jail Tsatsu Tsikata. Later, Ochano Ebeka say Obema Tsatsu Tsikata dey Obema no what's the word? He wanted to pardon him. Ono o say chire ejeli Tsikata wie no o wie no so opeso o pardon no o man the presidential pardon. Now story na it is saying, and sometimes we do these things because as some court is here no, that is the modus operandi of the NPP. Omoba abemu bia the omodi ye NDC no. And anything I catch NDC say at this point that has to change. That has to change because at least the Kufuor ba umia by way amaye a lot of evidence and reasons why over 20-30 people have to go to jail. First, Rebecca said, oh, there wasn't a clear-cut reason to jail anybody from the NPP. But at least for the past 7 years, what we have witnessed in Ghana, no, every attorney general who serves under John Mahama from 2025 should be able to jail not low-profile NPP4, high-profile NPP4, and we don't have to forget that. It is a steady Tsatsu Tsikata case very well, and the Pepe na 60 years a J Ekufuor a share court and making sure say you jail Tsatsu Tsikata. Now, as something saying, moment can history kekrebi, you really ra and the court what actually transpired. The ambulance case we know now you just juxtapose and I say they are toto now if you how the NPP operates and why they are a dangerous political party, and every day they make Ghana for Obidi Bonia or say Chinason is a fact. But we should not use the law against people when we know that some people are not guilty of a crime. There's one thing I always preach on my platform. Say Obidi Boni wa Ghana. Na say Em0tionally, ye di Em0tionally so na Em0tionally you applying a failure. That person needs to pay or has to face the consequences. It's a fact. And I'll not sit on my platform on any day to defend somebody who has been seen committing a crime with facts, proven facts. I will never do that. I will contest anybody who tries to skew the process, who tries to use the process against people because they have power, like what Godfrey Dame and Judge Sewa are doing in the High Court of Ghana today. But before we move into court today, let's take our time and read. Nianko back and say, hey, now when you see ya Tsatsu Tsikata 5 years. Now a dear pan or yeah. Now assembly pan assembly because I've heard so many people talk about say ye jeli chachu now or in the head GMPC and a chachu diska. It wasn't about sika chachu die. What was actually the issue? The chachu actually commit a crime. A DNA ma judge any conform agent so say yemfa no to efiase. These are things we need to know as young Ghanaians. A guide a shape what every political party, the kind of mentality and ideology they have. and then in our decision making, especially when we are choosing leaders, when we are choosing people to lead us. Because enya obia oya Ghana ni bia na dog Ghana. There are some people who tell you they are Ghanaians, but they don't have Ghana at heart. And that is what we are seeing today. People are suffocating the laws of this country, bending the rules to favor some individuals. The Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, Akache, said we all have the rights, to define ourselves as Ghanaians. And some people are not supposed to take the law into their own hands. Maybe especially people who have been given the opportunity to be in position. Nianko read exactly what Tsatsu did. Now, this is the history. And this platform, you know how it is. We try our best to break it down. Today, June 18, marks exactly 16 years since the wrongful conviction of esteemed legal colossus, Tsatsu Tsikata. Uko Enima will say, on this day, in 2008, na kufo na president. Na aka dien, aka beye afe. June, na aka beye 6 months, right? Na yakotwaba. So all the two ended the same thing. Akabe 6 months ni yakotwaba. Kofo to be dia no na akabe 6 months na yakotwaba. The same strategy no use here. So be free power. Always they find somebody in the NDC or high profile nobody asama so. I am trying to let you see how the NPP they operate. So I don't have a problem, but I want to show the young ones now. Moshe Manadrino. Hey, Mr. S. Mr. S, why do you bring this now? I'll deal with this later, Mr. S. This one, when I'm in the mood, then I go slot it in, right? All right. Thank you, Mr. S. Now, so check it. Time Kufwa insisted say, Tsatsu Tsikata. Which video are you talking about? They have something to give me. Mr. S. Okay, thank you, Mr. S. I'm sorry. I was talking to my team. When did I? Can you hear me now? When did the audio go off? Was it when I started reading Tsatsu Tsikata and I said after? Because I want to read. I want to start over. When did the audio go off, Mr. S? What time did it go off? Was it when I started reading this document or before? Okay, let's just do this. In here, confirmation from my team before I continue. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's go on this. Intimate church at Jikata, Bonnie, so yeah, Bonnie and so anya Bonnie. Now, so calculated time for insist yeah, then I buy MPP are buying ejina to say yenjeli Tsatsu Tsikata na ka be 6 months na kofo if you abai mu. Na omu hia bibi dia campaign. Send a bay and come betime win campaign no. Into omu hwehwe man say oh Tsatsu aya wunani yenjeli no. Tie. Into omu ko twe Tsatsu fi GMPC and omu insist say I was say jeli Tsatsu Tsikata. Inti now moment ready the AC yankasa at this point a mark for aban ejina so can say they need to jail Tsatsu Tsikata for 5 years and aka 6 months now ekufo ado ne ba omi aban no aden ende right now we are faced with another possible judgment against the NDC because the MPP they want to jail at Forson. Now we read the second paragraph. Now this is what it says. It says this. All right, Mr. S. On this day in 2008, an Accra High Court found Tsatsu Tsikata guilty of willfully causing financial loss to the state, a conviction that shocked the nation and sent ripples through Ghana's legal and political landscape. Almost see, year 2008 around June and a year court a Ghana a year high court a jeli Tsatsu Tsikata say a year Tsatsu Tsikata a cause financial loss to the state. Sata na J.A. Kufuor and a year president. Na J.A. Kufuor na kind of bosumi beye insia no free abamu. Now, so kind story now. I'm say on that fateful day, Tsikata stood in court without his lawyer, who was absent due to a scheduled interlocutory application. Saturday no mujeli Tsatsu na Tsatsu court se sebia ato Forson court de biai na judge in case obe the judgment. Na case ne krampo no yenkan wie ye. Day na Tsatsu court no na ne lawyer mpo nka no ho. Na ne lawyer the application fufure chira e fa cha case no ho the same cost premises. Enti Tsatsu Tsikata under Kufuor's regime no or court as a regular day say ende at Forson court no, there was no indication because the case had not ended. Nobody had closed their case. The case had not finalized. Enti they were just going to court on a normal day. Now Tsatsu Tsikata drew court no. What happened was that na the court the lawyer knew ho. Na owura court no de call enie. Tsikata intended to inform the court of his lawyer's absence and seek an adjournment, and so there was no anticipation of a judgment. As two other critical applications were pending at the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. In the Tsatsu court that day no, na Tsatsu lawyers are filing applications mienu. Bako ewo Supreme Court and bako ewo infa ewo Appeals Court. Sa applications until it is heard, no judge can read a judgment. That is how it works, because the applications have been submitted and received by the Appeals Court and the Supreme Court respectively. At that point, Tsatsu went to court to tell the judge, say, this is what has happened. That is why my lawyer is not even with me, because an application has been filed. My lawyer is following it up. It's a behind said this is what is going on, because read the judgment. There is no way you can read a judgment without my lawyer, and it has never happened. It never happens. A judge can never read a judgment without the accuser's lawyer there. You cannot just go ahead and say, I'm reading a judgment. That's why there's a notification. Yama obia notice say ada way enitina ye bebu asema. Judge or data or dibu asem. Oti asem ni nyina wi na wa hyeda. Or see ada way obia mra sa da na mebu asem no. That means or package all the parties should be present on this date. So there's no way a judge can read judgment without all the parties knowing, and also when there is an application pending. No, it never happens. But under J.A. Kufuor, it was possible. Mechiramo, the NPP, the way they work. Metuma catch for a fact. Ato Forson, some army will take out you. Probabilities of jail at Forson, it is high. I'm telling you. Ya can't wamano. It is part of the NPP Omwankasa party plan. Every time they come to power, they need to use the law against somebody in the NDC. It's a fact. It is something that has been arranged. A party, a party strategy, and yet ended almost started way back 16 years ago, and almost started Sassam. Now let's move forward. Notably, the Supreme Court was deliberating on the commercial viability of Valley Farms, the cocoa producing company at the heart of Tsikata's charges. In the time Tsikata Crown Court na one oba normal court no, na Supreme Court no omo da ho ka application na Tsatsu to Supreme Court no through the lawyer. So it means the application was being considered by the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court has thrown out the application in the first place, then you will say you have a case. But that application had been accepted. It has been considered by the Supreme Court. They were contemplating or deliberating on it. So how can a judge go ahead and strike and say, I'm giving judgment today? Abra, when you go to the Supreme Court and the Appeals Court, there are applications pending which is being deliberated upon. NPP no. They are dangerous people. He was accused of unlawful using the Ghana National Petroleum Corporation GNPC to guarantee a loan for Valley Farms while serving as its chief executive officer. Asema Akufo Aban editor Tsatsu Tsikata so ne say Tsatsu Tsikata na oye GNPC boss no eye company bia ye frɛ no eye Valley Farms no or the eye GNPC ena ekodi aginemu agi loan ema saa company ana farm no intina eye private company Valley Farms ena Akufo Aban ne say Tsatsu a oye GNPC boss no or the eye GNPC sika kwesia wa say saa farm no enkonkoji some loan bi inti wabɔ Ghana kro no eye no kre ana anya no kre enu ntina e court enu ntina nkrata any judges any lawyers e chirechirem. Now, despite the pending applications and the incomplete trial, the High Court, in an unexpected turn of event, convicted and sentenced Tsikata to 5 years on each of the 4 counts to be served concurrently. Inti, the charges for the tone so. Saturday na Tsatsu Tsikata area court and a lawyer, and so our Supreme Court find a way to make sure the Supreme Court will hear the application. No, the 4 charges, the 2 charges, no, say could be also could them 5 years. You can say concurrently. That means say jeli Tsatsu Tsikata 4 20 years. But ningina start to pay into obe 7 in 5 years. In the Tsatsu Tsikata raw court, na judge can say she does not care whether his lawyer has filed an application at the appeals court or the Supreme Court. She did not even give a date that she was going to give judgment, because if she had put out a date for judgment, and Tsatsu Tsikata's lawyers would be there, and the other party would know, said this is what was going to happen. Even journalists who were covering the story did not even know Tsatsu was going to be jailed that day. But when they entered the court, and one judge said the 4 the count na the charges no, all the 4 charges will buan 4 ni na sa some the 2 charges no na asam na nkasa no kre anansa nya no kre mumendwum. Now when you go for it, it says this sudden decision came just days before the Supreme Court was set to rule on the commercial viability of Valley Farms, a ruling that would eventually favor Tsatsu Tsikata. In the time na Assembly Court no, Tsatsu Tsikata lawyers echo file application Supreme Court to say muni bibi Assembly because of High Court. Sa farms na almost say Tsatsu Tsikata akodi the GNPC akosia wawa akodi sika ma farms no application na Tsatsu Tsikata lawyers file court Supreme Court say farm no na ehie sika GNPC amfom sika bi ankosia wawa enkrata ewo say sa farm we Valley Farm we omo gina omo na so na omo angasa etumi di omo dwuma no enie international Supreme Court no na omo in the process of basically saying say ampa omo giatum na High Court judge no ho na oye dwuma makofo no na omo nim say because the Supreme Court that time na ye legitimate Supreme Court no, that Supreme Court then there were Supreme Court that you could not enter and do business. In 2008, the Supreme Court we had were noble men and women who were basically looking at the issues before they pronounced judgment. But because the Attorney General then who served under Kufuor and J.A. Kufuor himself who had diabolic mind, you know, they used the High Court judge, you know, to at the end of the day call judgment. Abrana Supreme Court was about to call the case and say no. South Valley Farms for no, they actually have money, they are operating in this obi ka say Tsatsu Tsikata and the GNPC sika kwesi awa mo because they know say Supreme Court net case ni so definitely that Supreme Court no 2008 the no na America and no that 2008 Supreme Court no they were going to say from the document before them no, in fact Tsatsu Tsikata was not guilty or near bonnet. But the moment Supreme Court the High Court judge cannot jail Tsatsu. And it was in the same week and Supreme Court etnasi. And they knew that the Supreme Court was going to say Tsatsu Tsikata was not guilty because the Valley the farms for no Tsatsu did not basically use a GNPC sika to guarantee for them. Into what the NPP government then did was to go ahead of the Supreme Court. That is why, even though there was an application at the Appeals Court and the Supreme Court, the High Court bypassed all these powers because the President then, J.A. Kufuor, had instructed the Attorney General and the judge then to call judgment that day. It's not a planned from the government. What you say? Now, young queen in facts, and this is the same thing they are doing today. Yeah, we have at Forson case in so. So this case, a Kufuor and a static case, Tie. Now the Danko Kufuor and a static case way. A Hona Kufuor obe exposing who control a year the first time they entered Koroka say a year the Tsatsu Tsikata against J.A. Kufuor. A whole attorney general, when he was filing his case, that is how he filed the case. And a judge Nikache Kufuor say you are dumb. This is Tsatsu Tsikata against the states, against Ghana. It is not a fight between Tsatsu and Kufuor. So the judge in court told Kufuor to say, hey, you are dumb. You are not a lawyer. How did you become an attorney general? Go back and rectify this problem. In Titama, that was when Kufuor Kache Kufuor should step aside or Kufuor Jogate by. So Jogate was the Attorney General who made sure they scrutinized, they skewed the system to jail Tsatsu Tsikata. Jogate. Kufuor started the case. But Kufuor, early on, Kufuor said no, Kufuor is a criminal. Kufuor does not know the things he's saying, no, a legitimate lawyer, and that he's making fundamental mistakes in his applications, and that they realized that Kufuor was just there, it was just a hype. The woman who said Kufuor or bonds or file case said Kufuor against Tsatsu Tsikata. A honor Kufuor muze dabi. Akwawe sa dede kwa wabon onye lawyer papa. Quick eno mu ye Kufuor the free on the Jogate be show eno mu change ye no Tsatsu Tsikata against the states and not against Ghana. Internet because it was the government of Ghana trying to sue Tsatsu Tsikata. Now, Yanko enim. Until they bypass Kufuor making sure say they bypassed the Supreme Court and Appeals Court because they knew the judgment was not going to favor the Attorney General or Kufuor Baino. They knew Tsatsu Tsikata was going to work. So what they did is even though share judgment date, judge no the judge who was sitting on that case, Mr. S, give me the name, I just forgot. Judge no case no so na Kufuor any Attorney General Jogate Muna Kunaive ye and omu kole and omu judge case no they are no obian expect judge case tie. Even the Attorney General later admitted that the Supreme Court even the Attorney General later admitted at the Supreme Court that Valley Farms was indeed commercially viable, a crucial detail that Tsatsu's lawyer had sought to include in the trial evidence. Until later na omujeli Tsatsu wie no ena Jogate bejina court so omujitum say Valley Farms no in fact omanga so mo musika dada na enye Tsatsu no odi enim ekopa guarantee mo anfa GMP sika o jeli ni wie no na the Attorney General admit Jogate admit say I ba omo din kan jeli na wie because the idea was jail him, do not follow due process, make sure you skew the system. That time in 2008 they knew said the Supreme Court was a legitimate court. They knew you could not go to the Supreme Court and do business. They knew as an Attorney General you cannot go to Supreme Court and shop for judges. So they knew their nonsense, they could not take it to the 2008 Supreme Court. I am talking about the 2008 Supreme Court, not today's Supreme Court. Today's Supreme Court is basically like Malata. You can go and pick the fresh tomato you want and it will be something sitting there waiting for you. Now yanko enim say the political undertones of the conviction were evident. Besides, give me the name. On June 18, 2008, Tsatsu Tsikata drove himself to court expecting another judgment. However, the state was prepared for a different outcome. For the first time since the trial began in 2002, the Attorney General appeared in court with a full retinue of legal officers. Case now started 2002, no. na de bia attorney general ba court or the nipa bakumienu na sad day na mo peso mo jeli Tsatsu Tsikata, which is the 18th of June 2008 no. Attorney general came with a lot of members. Obano no, or the lawyers bear 9 or the clerk for bear 4 or the just say ultimately say attorney general was well prepared. Everybody was like, what is happening today? It's a regular court hearing. It is not like you are coming on the final day at the hearing. But people saw, journalists saw say, hey, today the attorney general is fully packed or the cruise in Aba. Abemum Penfonia the Adina Diomochi, attorney general Jogatechi Eba court. But Tsatsu Tsikata had a clear mind. He was thinking, say, his lawyer has filed the application and that the High Court will listen to the Supreme Court because they know that when there is an application pending, you cannot call judgment. Okay. Judge Ninani Dinde Henrietta Aban. Later I see Owusa Kramain. Henrietta Aban. They said the judge, she died, she was back up to Kramain and said, oh, her death was despicable. Messiah, give me her picture. Now, this is what it says. The courthouse was surrounded by police officers and the media buzzed with anticipation. This day now, Tsatsu Tsikata court, regular court, no. Attorney General Nebano, na the police for begu court ho nyina abontene. Omukuta tuo. Na say, Kofo Dinkama instructions say ende Madam Judge, jail no. It's not Jogatemo, they were coming to jail Tsatsu Tsikata. Abra Nominu said there was due process ongoing. Nominu said there was an application pending. But for them, they had already made up their mind. They didn't care about the court too. Kofo when a buyer, me saw the 2 agendas ne buy. 1, fast track High Court to jail NDC4, and 2, obe set up a reconciliation commission to make sure say with Jelly JJ Rollins am yakuboni 2. The 2 he failed 1, but 1 there he tried his best to do it. And then make him want some chirawono. Now, the only person unaware of the unfolding drama was Tsatsu Tsikata, who was subsequently taken to Nsawam prison without his family's knowledge. Tsatsu Tsikata by regular court, ne family they entered the court alone, no lawyer. The judge says, Kim, I've read my judgment, jail him, take him to Nsawam. That is how MPP Omubumine. Today be out Tsatsu Tsikata case, you know. This is how it happened. Now, this is what it says. Tsikata's time at Nsawam prison became a well-known chapter in his life story. Despite the harsh conditions, he refused a presidential pardon from President John Ejekun Kufuor, choosing instead to trust in the judicial system's eventual vindication. Yase Kufuor jeli Tsatsu wie no. Tsatsu de oka kire no ho, eka kire Ghana for se ono ondi bone na sebio ondi bone nti obetwen ama Ghana mbra na nkasa ayeden asaniti eyi na free eyeden eye strategy ene krono ankofo bi hyehye to ne so enti Kufuor say twa no ka say eye Tsatsu me pese me ma presidential pardon, me pese me ma amnesty, and Tsatsu ka say you jailed me, you and your attorney general, you jailed me. You knew I wasn't guilty of any crime. You knew I had not committed any crime, and I am not going to fall for your antics again. Kufuor jail in the no, or say, oh, where the jail in the name papa into me you. Tsatsu Tsikata said, no, let me sit here for the right thing to be done. Na Afghana for who se mendi bone na court nankasa and reverse de omuyeye because when I would go to fiase obama me pardon later no catch you say you are I'm an ex-convict, you pardoned me. That means bone ne de da hoda me so. But Tsatsu Tsikata say me mendi bone inti pardon or pardon me no, so pardon me I am coming out as somebody who was guilty, but I am not guilty because I come di bone na pardon me dia kamaje. But mean the bonity me pese Em0tionally wo any Jogate any Kufuor mo bending no with a high court judge no. You people should make sure say Em0tionally nkasa asa reverse no. So Tsatsu Tsikata stood on the principal line because Tsatsu for lema Kufuor sa Machiavellian tactics. Kufuor wa se anoma okohunu nsuo na wa ba ebusa say na hwan na hunu nsuo no ono na jele Tsatsu Tsikata or side Tsatsu Tsikata ebeti nenim abeje fans e de ababeje political numbers. And this was 6 months before Ebabe Wien buying. This is what the NPP does.
Debi kama amena Pendream TV ase. Now so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, Pendream TV.